Top 5 Real Skinwalker Encounters You Shouldn't Watch Alone. There are stories that exist in the shadows between what we know and what we fear. Stories that emerge from the American Southwest, whispered in voices that carry the weight of genuine terror. Tonight, we examine 5 accounts of encounters with something that defies conventional explanation. Something the Navajo people call Yanallushi, skinwalkers. These aren't campfire tales or internet fiction. These are testimonies from real people who claim to have witnessed something that challenged their understanding of reality. Whether you believe them or not is irrelevant. What matters is that they believe them. And that belief, born from direct experience, carries a particular kind of gravity. So dim your lights, check your doors, and prepare to hear what 5 different people swear they witnessed in the darkness. Number 5. The Grandmother's Warning. Nevada, 2018. An elderly Navajo woman lived alone in a modest house on the edge of the reservation. Her granddaughter would visit regularly, staying overnight to keep her company. During one such visit, the grandmother began acting strangely. It started with small things. She would pause mid-conversation, tilting her head as if listening to something only she could hear. She insisted on keeping all the curtains drawn, even during the day. When her granddaughter asked why, the old woman's response was simple and chilling. Yanallushi is watching me. The granddaughter had heard the stories growing up, but her grandmother had never been one for superstition. This was a practical woman, someone who had raised 6 children and managed a household through decades of hardship. Her sudden fear was unsettling precisely because it was so uncharacteristic. On the 3rd night of the visit, the granddaughter was awakened by her grandmother's voice. The old woman was standing by the window, speaking in rapid Navajo to someone outside. But when the granddaughter looked, she saw nothing, just darkness and the faint outline of sagebrush swaying in the desert wind. Her grandmother turned to her with tears in her eyes. "It's been coming here for weeks," she said. "Every night it watches. It knows I can see it." The granddaughter convinced her to move in with relatives in town shortly after. The old woman never returned to that house. She died 2 years later, but until her final day, she insisted that something had been stalking her in those desert nights. Number 4. Alone on the Reservation. A young man visiting family on a Navajo reservation in Arizona found himself alone one evening when his relatives were called away on an emergency. The house sat isolated, surrounded by miles of high desert terrain. He'd grown up in the city and wasn't accustomed to such complete isolation. Around midnight, he heard footsteps on the roof. Not the scurrying of an animal, but the deliberate, measured steps of something walking back and forth above his head. The sound continued for nearly an hour, moving from one end of the house to the other in a pattern that seemed almost methodical. He called out, thinking it might be his cousin pulling a prank. The footsteps stopped immediately. Then, after several minutes of silence, they resumed. But now they were faster, more agitated. The sound of whatever was up there suggested something much larger than a person. When he finally worked up the courage to step outside with a flashlight, he found deep scratches in the metal roofing. The marks were too large and too deep to have been made by any animal he could identify. More disturbing were the handprints he discovered in the dirt around the house. They appeared human at first glance, but the proportions were wrong. The fingers too long, and the palm too narrow. His relatives returned the next morning to find him sitting in his car, engine running, refusing to go back inside. When they examined the evidence, they didn't seem surprised. They simply nodded and began gathering sage for a cleansing ceremony. They'd seen such signs before. Number 3, the thing that rocked. The Mojave Desert stretches across California, Nevada, and Arizona, a landscape so vast and empty that it seems to exist outside of time. It was here, along a desolate stretch of highway, that a family encountered something that defied classification. They were driving home from a wedding, the desert dark except for their headlights cutting through the night. The father was at the wheel, his wife beside him, their 2 teenage children in the back seat. Around 2 a.m., their car began making troubling sounds. Steam rose from under the hood, and the temperature gauge spiked into the red. They pulled over on the side of the highway, miles from the nearest town. While the father examined the engine, the mother walked a short distance away to get cell phone reception. That's when she saw it. At first, she thought it was a playground rocking horse that had somehow ended up in the desert. It sat about 50 yards away, silhouetted against the starlit sky, moving back and forth in a steady rhythm. But as her eyes adjusted, she realized the proportions were all wrong. It was too large, too angular, and it wasn't sitting on anything. It was simply there, in the middle of nowhere, rocking on its own. She called to her husband, and when he looked up from the engine, he saw it too. The thing stopped moving. For several long moments, it remained perfectly still, as if aware it was being watched. Then, slowly, it turned what might have been its head in their direction. That's when they realized it wasn't a rocking horse at all. It was something crouched on all fours, something with limbs that bent at unnatural angles. And now, it was looking at them. The family piled into their overheating car and drove until they reached the next town. Engine be damned. They never reported the incident to authorities. What would they have said? That they'd seen something impossible rocking back and forth in the desert like a child's toy? But the image haunted them. The mother still refuses to drive through the desert at night. Number 2, running upright. A family farm in New Mexico, nestled in a valley surrounded by mesas and ancient rock formations. The land had been in the family for 3 generations, and they knew every inch of their property, which is why what they saw one evening was so deeply unsettling. The father was checking on the livestock before bed when he noticed the cattle were agitated. They were pressed against the far side of their enclosure, lowing anxiously and refusing to approach the fence line nearest to the house. He'd seen this behavior before when predators were in the area, so he grabbed his rifle and a powerful flashlight. What he saw when he swept the beam across the field was something that would change his relationship with his own land forever. A figure was running across the pasture, moving from the tree line toward the house. At first glance, it appeared to be a person, but people don't run the way this thing was moving. It covered ground with incredible speed, its gait both fluid and wrong, as if it was learning to move upright, but hadn't quite mastered the mechanics. The figure was tall, unnaturally thin, and seemed to flow rather than run. Most disturbing was its silence. Despite moving at what must have been incredible speed across uneven terrain, it made no sound. No footfalls, no disturbance of the tall grass, nothing. When the flashlight beam hit it directly, the figure stopped. It turned toward the light, and the farmer caught a glimpse of something that might have been a face, pale, elongated, with features that suggested humanity, but fell short of achieving it. Then it dropped to all fours and disappeared into the darkness with the same unnatural silence. The farmer didn't sleep that night. He sat on his porch with his rifle across his knees until dawn. In the morning, he found tracks in the soft earth where the creature had been running. They started as something resembling human footprints, but gradually became something else entirely, with what appeared to be claw marks at the tips. The family sold the farm 6 months later. Number 1. Human hands, animal body. Sometimes the most terrifying encounters are the ones that happen in groups, where multiple witnesses must reconcile what they've seen with their shared understanding of reality. This account comes from 4 friends who were camping in the high desert of Utah, far from any established campground or hiking trail. They'd chosen the location specifically for its isolation, a chance to see the stars without light pollution and to disconnect from the digital world. They'd set up camp in a natural depression surrounded by red rock formations, feeling secure in their temporary fortress of stone. On their second night, they were sitting around their campfire when they heard movement in the rocks above them. At first, they assumed it was a coyote, or perhaps a desert fox. The sounds were tentative, cautious, like an animal trying to determine if the humans posed a threat. But then, they saw it. A creature emerged from behind one of the rock formations and began making its way down toward their camp. In the firelight, they could see it clearly, and what they saw challenged everything they thought they knew about the natural world. It had the body of a large dog or wolf, covered in coarse, dark fur. But where they expected to see paws, they instead saw human hands and feet. The appendages were unmistakably human, complete with fingers, thumbs, and what appeared to be fingernails. The creature moved with the grace and silence of a wild animal, but those human extremities made its movement deeply unsettling to watch. Most disturbing was its behavior. It didn't approach like an animal investigating strange scents or looking for food. Instead, it seemed to be studying them, moving in a wide circle around their camp while keeping its eyes fixed on the group. There was an intelligence in its gaze that went beyond animal curiosity. It was calculating, evaluating, perhaps even planning. The 4 friends sat frozen, afraid that any sudden movement might trigger an attack. The creature continued its circuit for nearly 20 minutes before finally disappearing back into the rocks. None of them slept that night. They broke camp before dawn and hiked out in silence. Later, when they tried to discuss what they'd seen, they found themselves struggling to find words that adequately described the experience. How do you explain something that shouldn't exist? How do you convince others, or even yourself, that you witnessed something that falls outside the boundaries of known biology? They remain friends to this day, but they've never gone camping together again. The experience bonded them, but it also marked them. They carry the memory of those human hands and feet attached to something that was decidedly not human, moving through their campsite like a predator, evaluating prey. These 5 accounts share common elements that extend beyond their obvious supernatural themes. Each involves ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances. Each features witnesses who are fundamentally changed by their experience, and each raises questions about the nature of reality that extend far beyond the specific details of the encounters. The persistence of Skinwalker stories in Navajo culture speaks to something deeper than mere folklore. These accounts represent a collision between ancient worldviews and modern skepticism, between indigenous wisdom and Western rationalism. They force us to confront the possibility that our understanding of the world might be incomplete, that there might be phenomena that exist outside our current scientific framework. Perhaps these witnesses encountered something genuinely supernatural. Perhaps they experienced elaborate hoaxes or misidentified known animals under stressful conditions. Or perhaps, and this might be the most unsettling possibility, they glimpsed something that exists in the spaces between what we consider possible and impossible, real and unreal. The truth may be less important than the impact these experiences had on those who live them. Fear has a way of sharpening perception, of forcing us to pay attention to details we might otherwise ignore. And memory, particularly traumatic memory, has a way of preserving these details with crystalline clarity. Whether you believe these accounts or not, consider this. Somewhere in the American Southwest tonight, someone is looking out their window into the darkness, wondering if they're being watched. Someone is hearing footsteps on their roof, or seeing movement in their peripheral vision. Someone is encountering something that will change their understanding of what's possible in this world. And tomorrow, they'll have to decide whether to tell their story or carry it alone, knowing that either choice comes with its own particular burden. The desert keeps its secrets well, but sometimes those secrets find us.
Subscribe to Noctivox, hit the bell, and join us every Saturday to uncover the hidden